So good afternoon, everybody. Many of you know me, but some don't. My name is John Herzog. I'm chair of the Institute of Strategic Risk Management, the ISRM, here in Indonesia. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar titled Navigating Indonesia's Evolving Risk Environment, Terrorism, Crime, and Strategic Resilience. Thank you again, everybody, for taking time out of your afternoon to join the discussion today. For those of you who may not be familiar with this, the ISRM is a leading global center for strategic risk and crisis management. We bring together practitioners, academics, and policymakers from around the world. We foster collaboration, share knowledge, and drive innovation in the understanding and application of strategic risk. Through our global network, we support the development of professional capabilities, strengthen resilience, and shape the future of risk management. So this webinar we're having today marks continuation of a number of events the ISRM has had in Indonesia. Over the past year, we've had a couple of webinars, most recently in March, related to business risks surrounding natural disasters and climate change. And we had a big conference here in mid-June in which we had panel discussions on topics including urban resilience, the geopolitical impacts of what's going on worldwide, and also emerging risk factors. And today we're talking about a topic that many of us are quite interested in and follow closely, terrorism, crime, and strategic resilience. Indonesia's risk environment continues to evolve amid changing geopolitical dynamics, technological disruption, social polarization, transnational crime, and the continuing threat of violent extremism. While significant progress has been made in addressing terrorism, new forms of radicalization, misinformation, cyber-enabled threats, and broader strategic risks continue to present complex challenges for governments, businesses, and communities alike. Today's webinar brings together experts from academia and strategic risk management to examine these interconnected issues from different perspectives. Rather than viewing terrorism, crime, technology, and organizational resilience as separate challenges, we hope to explore how they influence one another and what this means for organizations and society overall moving forward. We're very delighted to have participants joining us from a wide range of organizations and across Indonesia, ASEAN, Australia, the UK, quite a global audience today. We hope today's discussion provides practical insights that you can apply within your own professional environments. So before we kick off, I wanted to briefly introduce our speakers in the program. And we're very fortunate to have three outstanding practitioners and leaders from across Indonesia's corporate and academic landscape. Our first speaker will be Dr. Zora Sukabdi. Dr. Zora is the head of the Terrorism Studies program at Universitas Indonesia and the developer of the MICRA Forensic Terrorism Risk Assessment Framework. Dr. Zora's research explores the intersection between psychology, terrorism, artificial intelligence, and risk assessment. In her presentation, Dr. Zora will lay the groundwork for our discussion by focusing on the foundations of extremism and the related psychological, sociological theories, the role of AI, and the development of her MICRA methodology. Next, we have Noor Huda Ismail, visiting fellow from RSIS out of Singapore, and an internationally recognized researcher, filmmaker, and practitioner working in the field of CVE, or countering violent extremism. Drawing upon years of research and engagement with former extremists and vulnerable communities, Noor will share perspectives on the social dimensions of radicalization and the importance of building resilient communities and community engagement. Finally, Pak Rakyan Adibrata, who serves as Government Relations Manager for Kresna Strategic. He's also a member of the Commission on Law and Human Rights at the Indonesian Ulema Council. Pak Rakyan brings extensive experience in government relations, counterterrorism policy, strategic security, and stakeholder engagement across both the public and private sectors. And Pak Rakyan will conclude our presentations by discussing how organizations can strengthen resilience amid an increasingly complex security environment. So what I hope for all of you attendees on this webinar, you're going to take away many different considerations. I think there's a lot of great information our presenter is going to share. But in my opinion, there's three general areas that I would focus on. Number one, an understanding of the current threat environment from the perspective of our individual presenters, and also redefine the terminology of risk in relation to the topics that they're presenting. Also, key aspects and dimensions which inform this, the rise and the role of AI, right? What is the psychology behind terrorism and criminal behaviors, and the importance of community engagement and community resilience. Then finally, what businesses and organizations can do and to take away as practices you can implement in your organizations to strengthen yourselves going forward. Now, a couple of quick housekeeping. After each speaker is going to speak for 15 minutes, we're not going to have a Q&A after each speaker. Instead, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, right? So what I would like everyone to do, if you have questions over the course of the webinar, please put them into the chat. and identify yourself if you're able to. And then between myself, Janice, we'll keep an eye on those, right? And then once Batrakyan is done with his presentation, we'll kick over to the Q&A and you can field your questions and we have a good discussion with our speakers about the topics we're going to be presenting. Pat Noor has to leave a little bit earlier today, so we're going to talk to him first after the presentation. So finally, whether you work in business, academia, government, risk and security, or community development, we hope you enjoy the program today. We encourage you to think about how these insights can translate into your operating environment. Thank you again for being with us. We have a really good discussion coming up. The ISRM is a membership-based organization. If you're not a member, I hope you'll consider becoming one. And you see on your screen our three great speakers who you'll be introduced to shortly. Before we get to the presentations, I want to introduce Ian Betts, who many of you know. Ian, he's our senior advisor for the ISRM ASEAN Hub here. Ian has extensive experience advising organizations throughout the region on strategic risk, resilience, and crisis management. Could we all mute our microphones, please?
Kadang-kadang suka ini saya berita-berita terus nggak dengar ya.
Hi, sorry, can someone mute their microphone? Thank you.
I think they muted you as well, John.
Sorry about that. You couldn't hear me. Thank you. Thank you, Dete. Okay, Ian, over to you to give us a little bit of context on what we're going to talk about today. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, and thanks for everyone for being here. David, Zora, Huda, Rakyan, great to have you with us this afternoon. You've said much of it already, John. So I'm gonna cut my comments short. I really want to just say that there's a growing recognition now that risk can't be understood through isolated categories. Terrorism, crime, technological disruption, political polarization, social vulnerability, institutional resilience, they all overlap now. And Indonesia is a particularly important setting in which to examine all of those phenomena. It's a large, diverse, and democratic country undergoing great and rapid social, economic, and technological change. New technologies are creating new opportunities for prevention, but also for recruitment, manipulation, surveillance, and criminal exploitation across many fields. And I think that's what we'll see in the sessions this afternoon. The risk environment today is no longer defined only by identifiable organizations or dramatic incidents. It's also shaped by less visible conditions, declining trust, social exclusion, economic grievances, online radicalization, of which we see so much today, identity politics, and the gradual normalization of extreme ideas. So the question today isn't whether Indonesia is more secure today. It's about whether its institutions and organizations and communities can adapt to the risks that we see emerging out of this environment. No single institution can manage the risks that we're seeing today by itself. The government may have authority and intelligence. Communities possess their own local knowledge and legitimacy. But at the end of the day, effective resilience really depends on connecting all of these capabilities before a crisis rather than working on it while it's going on. So I hope today's discussion will really help to move us beyond any narrow focus on threats and towards a deeper consideration of capability. And there's so much capability in this group among these speakers and in the community we formed with the ISRM now with the help of David and the work we're trying to do to build out a broader community of risk and security professionals and practitioners with the ISRM in Indonesia and across ASEAN. This capability, understanding risk, adapting early, working together as we have been on this, cooperating effectively, this will all help us recover when prevention isn't enough and we find ourselves in a crisis situation. That's what strategic resilience is all about. It's not about the promise that disruption can always be avoided, because it can't. It's about the ability to anticipate change, respond to it, absorb the shocks, and make the sound decisions that we need to before and during the crisis. So once again, thanks, John, and to all our speakers today, and to everyone who's tuned in. I'm looking forward to a great series of speakers. I'll leave it there, and I hope to join you back on the questions a little bit later. John, over to you, and thank you.
Sounds great, Ian. Really appreciate that additional context. So now we want to kick off the webinar with Dr. Zora Sukabdi. She's going to be our first speaker. Again, Dr. Zora is the head of the terrorism and developer of MICRA, Forensic Terrorism Risk Assessment Framework, and some others, which have been adopted by a number of entities. Dr. Zora's research explores the intersection between psychology, terrorism studies, AI, and risk assessment. And so her presentation is going to lay the groundwork for the rest of the discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Zora.